Hello, this week you will be working in Electromagnetic Induction lab. In this video, I will walk you through the experimental setup, the experimental procedure, and then I'll show you the available lab data that you can use to complete your lab report. So as you see here in this picture, or as you may have recognized, this setup is identical to the lab setup that we had in the last week lab, right? So I would say this experiment is a continuation of the last week lab. So here we have the two Helmholtz coils with 500 turns in there. And also we have the magnetic field sensor. And then we have this Pasco interface that we can collect data and provide the current into the system, or maybe we can measure the output voltage as well. In addition to those main pieces, we have this solenoid with 1600 turns in there. So basically we can connect these two sides to the interface that we can measure the current or the voltage that's induced onto the coil. So anyway, in the part one of the experiment, what we're going to do is we're going to keep the magnetic field sensor in between the coils at the center. Then we're going to provide the coils with a triangle shaped electric wave. I mean, it is a triangle shaped current. Then we're going to measure the magnetic field at the center, in between the coils. And in part two of the experiment, we're going to keep this solenoid connected to the interface at the center between the two coils. And then we run the current again, and then we measure the induced current onto the coil. So, you know, like there's the current going through the coil, so it will create a magnetic field at the center. And then we have a coil or a circuit that's lying over there, so it will be inducing a current into the circuit. All right, so let me take you to the available data and the lab manual. So on the Blackboard page, you should be able to find the lab manual as a PDF and also as a Word document. So you may use either one depending on what you're familiar with. And also if you don't have access to both PDF or the Word document, you may write your answers on a sheet and then scan it, and then you may submit as your report. Okay, so then also you may find the data sheet that attached to the lab assignment. So you may download that and you can see those data like in this document. Then let's move on to the lab experiment. So part one of the experiment, as I mentioned, you are going to send a triangle shaped electric wave and measure the magnetic field at the center between the two coils. So here, this will be the data that you will collect if you were really doing the experiment. So here I label it as part 1, page 56. That's page number referred to the lab manual page. So page 56, and the data looks like that. And it is compatible with the data that you see over here, right? And the regions are assigned accordingly. Then in part 2 of the experiment, so you're going to keep the solenoid in between the coils, and then you run the experiment again. And then when you're collecting data, you can collect the magnetic field strength around the coil, I mean around the solenoid, and also you measure the voltage that induced onto the solenoid. So this second graph over here, the bottom one, represents the voltage versus time graph. That is the voltage that induced onto the solenoid with 1600 turns. Okay, and here in this data, I have labeled the slope and the intercept because it's hard to read these numbers. So I list down the slope and the intercept for you. But if you really like to read these numbers, you may zoom in and read it. Also in the in this one, you can see I highlighted this area. So that's the area that we are reading the slope. So when you move on to the last page of the data sheet, you can see I highlighted this area. So that's the regions 1 and 2. So here you can read the slope for region 1 and 2 and the intercept for the voltage for region 1 and 2. And in the second page, you can see the region 3 and 4 highlighted, and you can read the respective slope and the intercept over there, right? So by using those numbers, you should be able to fill this data table and conclude your lab. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you. And if you have any questions, you may email your TA, and also you may meet a TA on a Zoom meeting. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.